We are live. Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Bridges Conversations. My name is Steve Gibbons. I'm the Executive Director of the Bridges Foundation here in St. Louis. We offer a 19th annotation experience of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola. And we love to talk about all things Ignatian. And today I am gathered with two of our prayer companions. Prayer companions are people who lead other people through the spiritual exercises. And we are here today with Martha Broyles and Kate Stroble. Hello, Martha and Kate.
Hello.
Afternoon.
Well, great. Well, today, as it's December 12th, we're coming up on the second Sunday of Advent, and Christmas will be here soon enough. And we thought we would take this time to just talk a little bit about how the spiritual exercises and our prayer practices that come out of those exercises fit into the world of Advent, and especially when we think about what Ignatius would call contemplating the Incarnation or contemplating the Nativity. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's begin with just some introductions. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, your family of origin, your family now, and just a little bit about your story of faith. You know, you grow up Catholic, come to become a Catholic. How did that all work for you? And a little bit about how you came to experience the spiritual exercises. I think for both of you that was through Bridges, but maybe talk a little bit about how that came to be and why. And so we'll let each talk for a minute or two on that. We'll start with Martha.
Thanks, Steve. I grew up the oldest of three children in a nominally Catholic home. But it was always something that was really important to me. I never could have articulated why, but I did know that it was. Married 48 years this month, 4 grown children, 10 grandchildren. It's interesting because I've been asked this question before, about, my faith journey. And like I said, I didn't come from an overly practicing household. It was hit and miss, it'd be great for a while, not great for a while. But it was always something that I felt pulled to. I can remember finding an old missal in an old Catholic encyclopedia from the 40s. I don't even know where it came from. But those were prized possessions that I would leaf through all the time. It was, like I said, just something that I was really drawn to. And, went through the whole college, not important to me phase and got, young, married and children, and those all happened quickly. You try to instill that, once you have children, then it becomes more important because you want to instill that for them. So I came to the exercises because I've always been a person that, she looks like she's got it together. And if I do what she does, maybe I'll have it together, And a friend had done the exercises, had received the exercises through Bridges. And I thought, I need to do that, I was quickly told by someone who was much wiser than I am, nope, not this year, you're not ready. I said, okay, And so I received the exercises about 21, 22 years ago. And then also had the grace to do the 30-day retreat here about 7 years ago. So I've done both.
Where did you do the 30-day?
Out at Sacred Heart Retreat House in Sedalia, Colorado.
Nice.
It was, I won't say it made me any holier. I think it just reinforced how remedial I could be.
I don't know how anything can make you holier, Martha.
Oh, I got some people I can line up that could refute that.
And you've been a prayer companion about how long?
Over 15 years, because my oldest granddaughter is 15, and it was before she was born.
Nice.
So, see, everything's measured in who you were pregnant with and how old somebody is.
There you go. So, all right. Thank you very much. Kate Stroble, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I am the middle of 7 children. So, and faith was really, really important in our family. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There was also a lot of difficult things that happened. And so we relied on our faith. I was born up in North County, so Florissant, St. Dismas, and then Ferguson, St. John and James.
I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah. And then eventually we moved south, where I went to Our Lady of Providence and then to high school at Coriezo Academy. So it's kind of, it was an interesting thing. But I would say too, our parents, they were, again, they just relied on their faith a lot. And my dad would, kind of take charge. And on the way to school, we might say the Memorare, which I didn't really understand what it meant, but it's one that stuck with me. And when tough things have happened in my life, it pops right into my head, which is, those are good things that parents do for their kids. So service was also really important. With 7 kids, it was never all about any one of us. It was always about what you do for other people. And so service was really important. And I taught for a long time. And when I left teaching, I ended up volunteering in the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. And so that piece, I had 2 sites. I still have one at Marion Middle School, a Nativity Miguel school. And so Mary is a piece of that too, which I'll maybe talk about later. But the other piece was I was at Fuse Pavilion at Jesuit Hall in the infirmary. And I would go and visit with some of the guys who needed help with their computers, because that was a background for me. But one had really dealt with a lot of, he just needed some time. And I spent a lot of time with him. And it was because of him. And these wonderful Jesuits always say, they're on a mission, and then you get to a point like anyone who retires and you say, what am I doing now? And he was so sweet. He would always say, I don't know what I'm doing. And then finally I said to him at one point, you're teaching me to listen. And it was because of that and my volunteer work with IBC that I went ahead and looked into the exercises. But I was able to finally tell him, you trained me. You did a good thing for me. So I thanked him.
It's funny. Last month we talked to Marion Love and Karen Siebenberger about Thanksgiving. And when we were doing this conversation, Marion, I don't know if you know this, but she came to do the exercises because she was a nurse taking care of the priests in Jesuit Hall. So they're ministering even when they don't know it, to your point. Yeah.
Exactly.
How's your own family right now? How many kids and grandkids?
I have 2 children and 5 grandchildren. And
same as me.
Yeah, my husband and I have been married 45 years, right after Christmas.
Same as us. There you go.
Yeah.
Martha's got a beat by a couple of years, but
yeah.
Just younger. That's all.
That's right.
I
That's
just did it younger.
130 years of marriage sitting here, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Thanks. Before we kind of launch into this talk of contemplating the Nativity and the Incarnation, just for the fun of it, do you each have a favorite Christmas Advent memory, either from your own childhood or from your time as a parent or grandparent? Just something that sticks out in your mind as we enter into this time of year. Martha?
I thought about this a lot, and the one that always comes up for me is I don't ever remember being aware of Advent as a child. Now I'm sure that it was, I just wasn't aware. But, as a young mom, I wanted to bring that into our family life. And so when the oldest was about 7, probably, so that meant that the youngest one would have been a newborn. I thought, we're going to do the Advent wreath, when it took some fits and starts to get going. But we finally kind of got into a little bit of a rhythm. Well, as a young mom, husband's active duty military. And so some nights he wouldn't be home because we would do it usually after dinner before bed. And you'd think, oh, can we just end the day? Can we just scoot these kids off to bed and be done, And so I'd try to get away with that. And invariably, a little voice from down the hall would scream, "We didn't do the Advent wreath." Now, I'd like to think that that's because they wanted to pray. I think they just wanted to prolong that, going to bed process. But
God works in mysterious ways.
He uses everything, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But one of the most precious things about that is I still have the little book that we use. It was called Advent Begins at Home by Liguori Press. They don't print it anymore. But one of the treasures is I've happened to have some of the grandchildren some years during Advent, and then to have them read from the same book that their parents did is a treasure.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very nice. How about you, Kate?
I remember the nativity sets. The nativity set in church was really it just really drew me in. And partly because I'm a very small person. I always have been. And I can remember my dad, standing me up on the pew or doing whatever he could to make sure that I was able to see it. And that always seemed kind of magical, or I don't know, it just really drew me in. So fast forward, when we got married, we got a set for ourselves. It was kind of a folk art looking set. Well, my husband's father, who's 95 and he's still alive, his parents are both alive, very sweet, dear people. But when he retired, he began carving and eventually carved a nativity set for each of his 5 children. So we have one. Ours is a folk art type that it's just a much larger version. So every year, right after Thanksgiving, the grandkids from Chicago, or this year our granddaughter who's just recently moved here, they help me get it out and unwrap and set all the people up, and they play with them. They have a couple nicks and dings now, but I really am happy about that because I think they will remember that.
Yeah, that's excellent, and it's actually a really great transition, I think, into what we really kind of want to talk about today, which is how do we go about contemplating the story of the Incarnation, the story of the Nativity. And in the Ignatian tradition, that means putting ourselves into the scene, right? How do we put ourselves in that room in Nazareth with Mary as she encounters the angel? Or how do we put ourselves in the manger or on the road to Bethlehem or whatever it is? It's a really important part of the spiritual exercises, especially as we enter into what's called the second week of the exercises, the time when we begin to really encounter Christ in all the different ways that he made himself human. And we begin at this time of year for good reason. So let's talk a little bit about, if you can, your own experiences of contemplating, of trying to pray with this time of year. If you can remember, even your own experience of the exercises and what that was like for you, and was it a struggle? Did it come easy? Just whatever your memory of that was. So we'll start with Kate this time.
Okay. I made the exercises up at St. Matthew the Apostle, and Pat Quinn is a Jesuit, and he was the pastor at that point in time, and I knew him beside that, but he did a great job. I can remember that particular meeting when we, the talk was on the Incarnation, and he brought in all kinds of artwork. And it was just like, let's imagine, let's look, and it was that shift from reading and praying to contemplating. And he, and I know that we often hear music. People will bring in music for meetings, and or you can watch. There's plenty of wonderful films. But to me, the artwork that just speaks to me. But it's also a very quiet thing because the colors and the movement of it can really pull you in. So he brought in some artwork by David Bunnell, who I've since looked him up, and he has beautiful things of the Annunciation, of Mary pondering. I mean, they just are really rich paintings. And then there's another one. I don't have my name on this right now. But it's another famous painting, Henry Tanner, I think it is. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That one. And so just some of those, they're just very rich and they're very quiet, and it just puts you in that space. So I have continued to use those for myself and also offer them to retreatants because it can make a difference. And the other piece of things too is just, I don't know, this time of year it's just gotten to be, it's been a nice thing for me because my service work at Marian, we celebrate the Feast of the Annunciation with our students. And so we have speakers come in, and that has just really, just each person talking to students about a brave yes has been really nice. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you can remember it just praying that way this time of year, whether it opened up anything kind of new for you that you hadn't either considered or remembered before. Or what do you think is happening in you when you do this, I guess?
I think it is just getting in touch with it and looking at, as we move through the exercises, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that I ought to be doing? Am I hearing it? And a recent speaker just recently, Caitlin Venta, said this to our students just last week. Am I hearing it? Am I feeling it in my heart? And what am I asked to be brave about? So it is a call back to that, to say, yeah, and just to know that I feel that I'm accompanied.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. How about you, Martha? What's your recollections of all this?
When I received the exercises, I, for some reason, still had a very narrow vision and understanding of the incarnation itself. For me, it was just a focus on the Annunciation and the Nativity, and not the incarnation as a whole. And we're, of course, in the exercises as we come into the second week. We've just come out of that first week, which is the focus of sin and how we understand that and the mystery of sin. And then to understand, which has, for me, has grown so much over the years, of the enormous gift of the incarnation as a response to the fracture that was in place, or has been in place because of our human frailty. And this enormous gift of the incarnation, one of the images that I use whenever I speak about this, that Apollo 8 image of the globe, which we've all seen, and is so beautiful and from afar, and everything's blue and green and the clouds. And then I stumbled across an image of that same image that was fractured into thousands of pieces. And that really struck me then, to realize that the incarnation was God's response to bring that image back into a whole. And of course, Ignatius's genius in that he uses the Annunciation and the Nativity here at the beginning of the second week, because we can all relate to a baby. We've all seen a baby. And the beautiful Christmas card images and all those things that evoke so many memories for us. Get in touch with a part of us that we can all relate to, whether you've had children I think it's safe to say that we've all been around children or babies, I'm a very visual person, so contemplating in that way comes easy for me, but I know that it does not for everyone. And so to be able to use that image of a baby, it helps people then get into, oh, okay, I can see that in my mind's eye, whereas to ask someone to contemplate on the bigger of, like I said, the incarnation, that's large, and how do you visualize an image of that? But then Ignatius, like I said, is so genius in that he uses that image of the Annunciation and the Nativity right here at the beginning of the second week. As we then will venture on and journey on to learn to know Jesus more intimately, starting with something we know and understand.
Yeah. We were talking just this week to I'm with the online Bridges site this year. We were talking about this with our retreatants, and we were kind of explaining this type of prayer and this type of contemplation. It's putting yourself into the picture, right? Putting yourself into the story. But at the same time, it's a letting go of that to see what God is going to do with it. It's not just recreating something like you're producing a movie. It's entering in and then letting go. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. And letting God then take that and run with it, and having the courage to allow that to happen, to allow God to lead you along and to where you're going to go in the image and in the story and in the scripture. And sometimes it's a surprise, like, gee, I never thought about that.
I was just going to ask if either in Christmas time or outside of Christmas time, have either of you felt really surprised by where this kind of prayer led you?
I can remember one time thinking about it, like I said, talking about the nativity. We envision, like I said, a Christmas card or a nativity scene. I have a Lennox nativity scene. It's very sanitary and porcelain and pretty and all the. But that wouldn't have been a pretty and sanitary place. It was a place for animals, so there was going to be animal things that weren't pretty, didn't smell pretty, didn't and that was a surprise to me. I thought, oh, well, gee, there was no little drummer boy,
Yeah. How about you, Kate? Anything particular come to mind?
Not any specific that I can recall right now. No, but it's always just a very calming, peaceful experience for me at that point, I think.
You've both touched on this a little bit, but let me ask it in a slightly different way. What advice do you have for people who are maybe entering into this for the first time, or this is new to them? Maybe they're struggling with the whole idea of conjuring an image or putting themselves into a scene. What advice or resources would you perhaps recommend that might help them along? Or what would you say to your own prayer companion? Or your own retreatant? So, Kate?
Well, it's an interesting thing because we're not all the same, and some people are big thinkers and some people are big feelers, and it's really been very rich for me to work with both of those types, because I learn so much every time I do it. God works with the retreatant, but God works with me as well, and it's been really, I am so grateful for that. I really am. But I would offer, I have offered, artwork, poetry. There's also another book. I don't always offer it during the retreat, but oh my gosh, who is it? Mark Thibodeau wrote a book called God, I Have Problems. And he laughs about the fact, I don't know if he's retitled that or not, but anyway, but the way that he did it, he's kind of indexed it by feelings. So what are you going through? I'm angry. God, I'm this. God, I'm that. And then he offers scripture passages, and then he offers, just like Kevin O'Brien does in his books, he also offers contemporary writing that kind of goes along with it. So it gives you a lot of rich resources to look at and think about, contemplate, pray with.
Yeah. Yeah. Martha?
The number one thing I find myself repeating over and over is, number one, trust the process. Trust the process. And two, let go of an expectation of yourself and of the scripture and of the story or the meditation, whatever it happens to be that you're praying with that particular day. And let it flow. Like I said, talking about the nativity, start with something whether it's a picture of your own child or a picture of a Christmas card. Start there if you don't have any other starting point. And then just release an expectation, and it will come. And it may not be what you expect, and it may not look the way you want it to look, and it may not feel the way you want it to feel. And that's all okay. That's all okay, because God is using that and showing us the possibilities. But number one, trust the process. And like there's different films and artwork, like Kate mentioned, and all these different things. If those speak to you, use them. If they don't, put it aside. Use what works for you and let that be okay.
Yeah. I've heard people say, oh, I love The Chosen, and it really helps me get into my imaginative prayer later. And I've heard other people say it gets in the way of my imagination because and as you say, use what works and don't
leave
try
the rest.
And leave the rest.
Yeah, I agree with you, Martha, when you say, let it go. And I do think that there's time. You have to trust. That's the thing. As you said, trust the process. And we circle around. I always think of, curriculum as a teacher, we spiral it. It starts out here and it comes around again and it comes around again. And so the beautiful thing about the exercises is that, we follow in many, many respects, we are often close to the liturgical year.
Right.
And so we'll come around again, and God will continue. We have to trust God will continue to work with us and teach us, and all the people around us will do the same. So
exactly. I had a retreatant one time tell me, she said, I don't have an imagination. And I thought, oh, okay. And so I invited her to remember, events in her own life. Do you remember when, that first grandchild was born? Do you remember when your daughter got married? She goes, no, I don't. And that was very difficult. And she was not a visual person. Like I said, that is my own weakness and my own struggle, is to connect with someone who's not a visual person, because I am such a visual person. And so I have to really trust that process and get out of the way and let God use, what he's going to use for them. But it's interesting sometimes.
Well, we are coming up on a half hour. There are a few people watching live on Facebook. If any of you have a question, please feel free to put it in the comments there on Facebook, and I'll see it. In the meantime, let me ask one more question, and it's a little not off topic, but a little addition to what we've been talking about, and that's the fact that as joy-filled and joyful and prayerful as Advent and Christmas can be, I think we're all aware that for a lot of people, it can also be a difficult time. When we're missing people from our lives, it's great to as I was telling you all last time we talked, my mother died 2 days after Christmas when I was 21 years old. And every Christmas, sometime during that season, I'm brought up short by that, and it doesn't ruin Christmas for me at all.
No.
It's there's a joy in that grief too. But nevertheless, there's people that are suffering much more recent losses, or they have children who aren't coming home, or whatever it is. So what would you suggest to them? What would you have to say to them in regard to, I guess, prayer and how we approach these days leading up to Christmas? Martha?
It's so easy to fall into the, offer it up, or, all those trite phrases that we would say. I would also encourage you to that person to lean into it a little bit. Allow that, those feelings to wash over you. Allow those memories to flood back, and then offer that in prayer and say, okay, God, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where to go with it. This doesn't feel good. Help me through it. Like I said, that sounds trite, and I don't mean for it to, but sometimes you just have to embrace it with both arms and know that you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same people that might struggle with, say, imagining Mary, well, you could say, well, can you imagine your own mother? Do you remember your own mother?
And that can backfire on you.
Yeah, well, that could be true too, because you never know those relationships, right?
Exactly.
Right.
But to trust where that prayer will take you, back to our
Exactly.
point again, if a meditation on Christmas leads you into your own family and memories, then maybe that's where you need to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Kate?
No, I was just going to say, there were difficult times for us during Christmas, and we did lose my dad early. That was a tough thing. But just yesterday, one of the women, a good close friend and colleague at Marion, she had a really difficult loss of her nephew in the military. He was lost right before Christmas, and she just talked about it again yesterday. But she had been in a conversation with somebody, and they told her that they were praying for her, kind of that communion of saints piece of things, And she was so struck by it. She told me about it, and she said, the next time I find because it happens to her, a lot of these Christmases, she just has a big, she lets it out and she lets it go. But she said, the next time I do that, I will think of, it was her name, the woman who prayed for her was Mary Jo. And she said, I'll think of you, Mary Jo, and I'll remember that you continue to do that for me. So,
yeah.
What a gift.
Yeah.
There's, we're never promised pain-free existence, right?
No.
But we are promised that we won't be alone.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good thing to remember, especially this time of year, and to be mindful of those around us who might be going through those issues.
Agree.
Well, thank you both for this really great conversation.
Thank you.
We really enjoy it. If you're listening live, we thank you. If you want to share this with someone else, it will live on the Facebook page for a while. It'll also be easy to find on YouTube and on the Bridges website itself. And we'll be posting this as an audio podcast within a day or two. So check out wherever you get your podcasts and search for Bridges Conversations, and hopefully we'll come right up. So Kate Stroble, Martha Broyles, thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you all and to everyone listening.
Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
Real quick, we're next month, we'll be having a conversation on Friday, January 16th, and I'll be talking with Christy Hicks-Ite. She's a Bridges prayer companion, but she's also the director of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, which Kate mentioned earlier she is a part of. So a lot of us have known Christy for quite a long time, and she has this new role with Ignatian Volunteer Corps. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, what IVC is, and how you might think about getting involved in that as you enter into your own retirement years. So a lot to talk about there. All right. We will see you all next time. You guys hold on for just a minute and I'll be back.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.